guys, welcome back to my channel. So the last time we spoke about Lake Lanier, that was on July 31st. Well, it is regret that I have to advise you guys again that someone else has tragically lost their life at this haunted lake. Lake Lanier is infamously known as the haunted lake. If you're new, I'm going to give you a little backstory about Lake Lanier. But first, let's talk about what had happened based on reports. So it is said that a 23-year-old man had passed away on Saturday, September 2nd. He was running down the dock on Lake Lanier. He slipped, fell into the water. Now, according to the report, it is said that after he fell in, because ain't no way anyone was going to go in and fetch him, right? Because the history of Lake Lanier is, if you're not a really experienced diver, if you go down, more than 50% of the time, you may not come back up. You have to be, even in cases where the person is a really great swimmer, they don't take the chance to go down because weird things happen out of the blue at Lake Lanier. So when this 23-year-old gentleman slipped and fell, what they did was to call the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, because that's the department that is normally called in whenever there is a tragic incident. And then the State Department would then reach out to, the fire department or whichever department they need to reach out to. So after the Georgia Department of Natural Resources was called, they then called the Hall County Fire Rescue crew, who later discovered the gentleman's body under 17 feet of water. It is said that this victim can be identified as Gavry Alexander Whitlock. And that's all that is being reported. He was just running down the dock. He slipped and fell into the water without resurfacing. Now, I have to say this. I know that many of these reports, they are just weird. And sometimes it gives a sense that really you also have to be careful of, if you're going to Lake Lanier, be careful who you go to Lake Lanier with. Because sometimes these things where they say people slip and fell and all of that, let me tell you, could be someone who wants to get rid of you. And they know that Lake Lanier is infamously known as the haunted lake. And if they shove you in that, you're not going to come back up. And that's one way they can get rid of you easily. I'm not saying that this is what happened with Gavry, but we all are not slow, okay? We all aren't slow. So I'm just saying. Now, also, I don't know why it is that people keep going back to this lake, keep playing around as though everything is okay. It's not okay. I'm a Jamaican and I can tell you that I've learned about this lake. This lake has really done some, questionable things to people. Weird things happens at this lake. And when, expert divers go down, many of them are traumatized. Some of them resign from being a diver because what they see once they go down to the bottom, it is really scary. They have reported catfish, or what looks like catfish, that they have never seen anywhere else, size, and they've seen shadows, something that looks like people down there. And there's even cemetery, old buildings and everything, because this was once a Black community. So the history is that Oscarville, it was a small town in Georgia, USA, that was home to about 1,100 black people in the late 1800 and early 1900. It was the site of a racial violence and displacement that took place back in 1912. And the incident that took place in 1912, it was truly horrific. What had happened is that the people who were living here, they were very decent citizens. There were carpenters, blacksmiths, bricklayers, farmers, really upstanding people. And at that time, it's not as though, as black people, we were perfect or are perfect, but at that point, we had to be, right? And we had to be pulling together because we were still in the era where black people did not have any say, any rights. And the people who, you know, got Oscarville, Georgia as a town, it started from people who fought in the American Civil War. A few of them were handed pieces of land, and they were proud citizens who later sold a share of their land or invited friends or relatives or shared their property, right? So it was slowly developing. And what had happened was a white woman was found near Oscarville. I mean, there were other communities, of course, but at the time, if something happens, it had to be black, someone black who did it. So when this woman was found deleted, automatically Oscarville was accused of committing the crime. There was no investigation. They didn't want to hear ish because there's a black community nearby. It had to be someone from the black community who envied this white woman. And because of that, they basically did that to her. So a group of angry white folks, they went into Oscarville and they didn't even spare the babies. We know the story, right? Only a few citizens were able to flee Oscarville. So after that, what building they didn't catch on fire was what they couldn't. And then in 1950s, they flooded the community of Oscarville because at that point, no one was living there after that, violent, racial violence that took place. So they flooded the community, and that is how Lake Lanier was formed. They used like dams and they just opened them. They flooded the area. It was completely submerged, and that is Lake Lanier. Lake Lanier is Oscarville, once a black community. No, there's one thing I can tell anyone as a Jamaican, and that is anywhere that was once a slave territory or anyone that was a part of slavery once lived, those areas are highly sensitive areas. How do I know this? I'm a Jamaican, and you would think that as a Jamaican living in a country that is predominantly black, everything should be okay if you occupy a land that was formerly owned by slave or a former slave burial site. Our ancestors, they don't play. They don't play. Many of our schools here, hospitals, churches, they are built on old slave cemetery. And as such, there are certain times that these schools have weird activities where the students would go into a trance, students get sick, teachers go into a trance, and they have to close the schools down. And this normally happens during certain time of the year where there is a history of active slave either revolt, resistance, or some form of slave movement. It's as though the ancestors are having their own uprising going on. And if you are an occupant of this land, you're going to have that experience. Some people who lives on these lands, because some of them are inherited, what they will have to do is perform specific ritual. Even beaches that had any history of strong slave activity, those beaches, in some cases, you have to completely avoid them, or some time of the year, you cannot go to those beaches, especially when it comes to months like August, July, August, September, October, and December. I don't know what. I know Caribbean history, so I have an understanding of what happened during certain months and certain dates. But let me tell you, August ain't no month to play with when it comes to our ancestors for some reason. July, August, September, October, those months are like, the most active when it comes to weird happenings. So as a Jamaican, I can tell you that. So just imagine a place like Oscarville that was once a black community where something so tragically happened. And when a diver goes down, they can see cemetery, they can see this, they can see that. Just imagine people roaming that area, living in that area, thinking that they can go about their business as they like. No, it's not happening. And I don't understand, why is it that people keep going back to this place? I understand that people live at Lake Lanier, and I can also imagine that a lot of these people have rituals that they perform that they're not telling anyone. And I can also imagine that a lot of them, knows what to do, what not to do, when to do, and when not to do. But guys, you know what? It's very sad to learn that someone else has lost their life. And it's just September. We spoke about, 3 people dying within 48 hours of on July. The last video that I did was July 31st. 3 people had died that weekend. I cannot tell you for the love of God why people are still messing around with this lake. And not just that, we have Usher's ex-wife, Tamika, who has been trying to get a petition going for them to drain Lake Lanier, do the necessary cleaning, and put in some safety measures. But listen, I honestly believe that no matter what they do, Lake Lanier is just darn haunted and should be avoided at all costs, especially at particular times of the year. You can do your own little research, just find out, just Google search, how many people have died, when they've died, because let me tell you, when you do, you'll be shocked by these weird occurrences. But I can just let you guys know what is going on. It is up to you to check it out for yourself. You can also check my playlist on Lake Lanier to learn more. But let me know what your thoughts are about someone else losing their life just after July 31st, when it was over 3 people who have lost their lives at Lake Lanier within the space of 48 hours. I want to hear from you. While you're at it, give this video a big thumbs up, share if you care, and see you all the next time we have something to talk about. Bye, guys.